In this video, we are going to talk about 4 things. Your results, the discussion, the conclusion, and your recommendation sections. So you collected your data, run your analysis, and now you are staring at a blank page thinking, how do I even start writing my results section? Don't worry. Let us break it down step by step. So for the results section, the first step is to understand the goal. So here we go back to our chapter 1 or the objective section. So the results section is not about interpretation. It is about reporting what you have found in correlation with your study objectives. So you are presenting your findings clearly and objectively in a logical order. Save your explanations and the meaning for the discussion section. And step 2, organize by research questions or hypotheses. So if you've stated some hypotheses or research questions, this is how you are going to use them. The easiest way to structure your results section is to follow the same order as your research questions or hypotheses. If your first question was, does smartphone use before bed affect sleep quality? Your first result should answer that question directly. Then you move on to the next question or objective in that order. Step 3, present key findings clearly. Use tables, charts, figures to summarize data, but avoid overcrowding. Again, you're supposed to dump everything, but avoid overcrowding. Each visual representation should be labeled properly. So table 1 could be correlation or association between screen time and sleep duration. Then you write 2 to 3 sentences explaining what that table shows without interpreting it. So you're just supposed to show without interpreting. For example, as shown in table 1, students who use smartphones for more than 2 hours before bedtime reported significantly shorter sleep durations compared to those who use them for less than 30 minutes. And you can probably add, if there are certain statistical values there, you can add them in brackets. Step 4, report statistics accurately if applicable. That is, if you are reporting statistics. If your research is quantitative, report the specific statistics that support your finding. What do I mean by statistics? The mean, the standard deviation, the p-values, correlation, regressions, etc. Always include both the numbers and the plain language summary. So something like there was a significant negative correlation between smartphone use and sleep quality. You can put in the brackets maybe p less than 0.01 or something like that, indicating that higher phone use is associated with poorer sleep. So always include the numbers in the plain language summary. Step 5, include qualitative findings if applicable. So if you've conducted interviews or focus group, that is if you've done qualitative, organize your results by themes or categories. So you use short, relevant quotes to support each theme. For example, several participants describe feeling mentally overstimulated before bed, making it harder to fall asleep. Then the next step here, that is step 6, is keep interpretations for discussion. I'm repeating this again. Don't explain why something happened. Just show what has happened. Think of this section as showing the data without any commentary. And I think this could be optional for some cases and some schools, but you can write a brief summary at the end. So you end the section with a short summary that connects back to your research questions. For example, overall, the result indicates a clear link between pre-bedtime smartphone use and reduced sleep quality among university students. So as simple as that, that is how you write a solid results section, clear, structured, and objective. Now we proceed to the next chapter. So how to write a discussion, conclusion, and recommendation. So this is where you prove that you truly understand your results, not just what they are, but what they mean. So step 1, we have to now understand the purpose of this chapter. The discussion is your chance to explain your findings, to interpret, connect, and justify. The conclusion summarizes key insights and contributions. The recommendations, as we can all guess, shows how your research can be applied or improved. So in short, discussion equals interpretation, conclusion equals summary of the meaning, recommendations equals Next steps. Most students will try and just simply restate the result, but at this level, you need analysis and reflection, critical reflection. So let's break it down. Writing the discussion. Again, the discussion session is the brain of your thesis. It's where you make sense of your findings and show how they relate to your research questions, objectives, and theoretical framework if you have any. So let's look at the structure. The first step is to start with a brief summary of your key findings. So the study found a moderate. Let's assume we are doing a study on the relationship between TikTok usage and student academic motivation. So the study found a moderate negative correlation between TikTok usage and student academic motivation, suggesting that excessive social media engagement can hinder study focus. So we are just trying to say that the study has found that TikTok use and the academic motivation of students are related. So you start with a brief summary of your key findings. And one other thing you can do in this first step is you can equally arrange the discussion by headings of your research questions or hypotheses as we did in the result. So if your first objective is to probably find out how many people are using the TikTok, you can start with the discussion session, the first heading to be prevalence of TikTok among students in so and so. You get it? So you can still organize them by headings or things to make your discussion flow properly. But to each his own, because certain schools and institutions have their recommendations and instructions. So just follow what is necessary. Then the next step, interpret what that means. So you've now stated the brief summary of that key finding. Now interpret what it means. Explain why that result might have occurred. For example, in our example, this could be attributed to the addictive design of short-form content, which promotes distraction and reduces the time available for academic tasks. And step 3, compare with existing literature. So now you stated a brief summary, right? You've interpreted what that means. You are now going to compare with existing literature, some work that has been done already in your field. So you link your results to previous studies you cited in your review. Usually, whatever study that you've probably cited in your literature review is useful, because if you're able to do your literature review perfectly, you can just go and link your studies back to the examples you stated. For example, these findings support the work of John et al. 2022. Or if it doesn't support, it can be like, contrary to the findings of John et al. 2022, consistent with prior research by so and so. So you link your results to previous studies you cited in your review, or you can find online. So you either state whether your finding is being supported by someone's work or it contradicts what is already available. Example, this result align with Alabi 2021, who found that frequent social media use correlates with reduced academic persistence among university students. Simple as that. And then the next step, step 4. This is very useful if you have a theoretical or conceptual framework that is guiding your study. So if you've used any theory or conceptual framework to guide your study, show how your data fits or challenges your chosen theory. For example, there is this theory, self-determination theory. You can say that according to the self-determination theory, intrinsic motivation decreases when external distractions dominate attention. And this supports the observed reduction or decline in the motivation among heavy TikTok users. So you are trying to say that this theory also supports the result that we found. That will even strengthen your argument more. Then the last step in discussion, which is called the implication. Some institutions require it, some institutions don't, but it's also very, very important. So the implications, what do I mean by that? Implications is talking about what do these findings mean for practice, policy, or future research. So all these things that you found, what does it mean for practice, policy, or future directions? So an example statement for the implications could be, these findings suggest that universities should promote digital literacy programs that teach students to manage social media use effectively. So you link this to actual practice or policies or future research. And remember, the discussion should sound confident and interpretive, not repetitive. It should sound confident and interpretive, not repetitive. And then we move on to the next chapter, which is the conclusion. The conclusion isn't a summary of your chapters like you've been led to believe. It's more of a synthesis of what your study contributes to the field. So here's how to structure it clearly. First, restate your research purpose and questions. So you start by saying something like, this study aimed to examine the impact of TikTok use on academic motivation among university students. Then you move on to step 2, which is where you summarize your key findings in brief. So findings reveal that moderate social media use can support motivation through exposure to educational content. That's excessive use negatively affects focus and time management. Then you present your overall conclusion in the next step. So what general statement best captures your results? So something like, therefore, while TikTok can serve as a useful learning tool, uncontrolled use diminishes students' internal motivation toward academic work. And yeah, step 4, you can have where you emphasize the significance of your study. Yeah, you need to emphasize how significant your study is. So how does your work contribute to the field? You can say something like, the research adds to growing body of knowledge of social media and education by highlighting the dual impact of short-form content on learning and motivation. So your conclusions should sound decisive. It should show confidence in your results and what they mean. Then we are done with that. And then we move to this place where I think it should also be another easy aspects. So writing the recommendations. So the recommendations are the practical application of your study. And you can also organize them in 3 types. So you can have recommendations for practice. That is the first type. So based on your findings, what should practitioners or institutions do? So you can say something like, educators or the National Health Education Ministry, so and so, should integrate digital wellness training into the first year orientation programs to help students balance online engagement with steady commitments. That is for practice. So what should practitioners or institutions do? Then the next step or category of your recommendations is going to be recommendations for policy. So what changes could policymakers or administrators make? People who can change the rules. So you can say universities should adopt guidelines promoting productive use of social platforms for academic purposes. So that's your recommendations for the policymakers or administrators. And you can also have recommendations for future research. That is the last category. So how can future studies build on your work, or what can they take away from your work? You can say something like, further research should explore longitudinal effects of social media use on academic motivation using larger and more diverse samples, because yours probably is just collected at one point in time among a group of people. Where you can say further research should focus on collecting it from different groups of people, even larger than yours, over a period of time. So always keep your recommendations specific and actionable. Don't make them vague. And also make sure they are aligned with your findings. Don't go and say something that does not correlate with your finding. And yeah, avoid vague advice like students should be more disciplined. That does not mean anything. Ground everything you are going to be commenting evidence. So yeah, that is it. And always remember to avoid these mistakes like we stated earlier. So avoid repeating your results word for word. Avoid introducing new data in your discussion. If you've not introduced that data in your results, please don't bring it in your discussion. You're going to set yourself up for failure. then don't also write generic conclusions unrelated to your objectives. No. And also, avoid giving unrealistic recommendations not supported by your findings. And always stay focused on what your data truly shows. Only focus on what your data shows. Finally, so that is how you write a clear, logical, impactful results, discussion, conclusions, and recommendations chapter. And if any of you are at this stage, you now completed your thesis journey from the introduction to the conclusion. And probably the next step is to focus on the thesis, defense, and preparation. Thank you for sticking around, and catch you in the next video.